Good evening. I'm Zoe Baker and I'm the Mayor of North Sydney, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this Cultural and Creativity Forum this evening. I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet, the Cammeraygal people of the Eora Nation. I thank and acknowledge the Cammeraygal people for their careful custodianship of these lands, waters and skies for over 65,000 years, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and I extend that respect to any First Nations people joining us here this evening, either here at Council or online. Before we begin, a very small housekeeping matter. If you wish to improve the visual quality of this YouTube presentation, there is a toggle on the bottom right-hand side of the screen that you can use to do so. On behalf of Council, I sincerely thank all of the panel members who will be joining you here tonight. And shortly, Jen Juice from Cred Consulting will facilitate a panel discussion. Tonight's event is the final of a series of community discussion panels as part of a much broader community engagement that Council has been undertaking. It aims to help us to understand what the North Sydney community would like to see for the next 10 years. It's been really wonderful to see the high levels of community engagement in this consultation, and so many North Sydney residents, workers, businesses and visitors have become involved in this process. Public participation in local government is crucial to building resilient communities. It's about vibrancy, diversity and sustainability in our community. Ensuring that your voices are part of this process and that your needs and aspirations will be reflected in what will become our community strategic plan. I cannot reiterate enough that this is genuine collaboration between the Council and our community. This is not a ticker box consultation exercise. Your feedback will direct and shape the plans and the policies that will shape our future. Tonight's focus, I'm thrilled, is on culture and creativity. It's an incredibly important issue for our local government area and indeed globally. Culture and creative activities bring communities together, whether through celebrating our heritage, whether enjoying or making music or visual art, theatre, dance, digital media, gaming, design, fashion, or participating in community festivals and events. Culture and creativity not only entertains us or feeds our spirits, it plays a vital role in enhancing social cohesion and driving economic development and supporting civic identity. This is the first time that culture and creativity in North Sydney is truly being looked at in a holistic way. At the same time, the state and federal governments are placing a great deal of priority on this and significant investment in culture and creativity. Council is really proud to be at the forefront of this conversation, and I'm really excited to see what you have to say. North Sydney has a unique cultural identity that is reflected in our diverse stories, heritage and beliefs, in our public places and spaces, as well as art in all of its forms. Most importantly, our cultural identity is grounded in the legacy of the world's oldest continuous living culture, that of the Aboriginal people. Significant sites like the ancient engravings at Balls Head and Berry Island serve as poignant reminders of the traditional custodians of this land and their enduring presence and the richness of their cultural heritage. But they also serve as a reminder that there is much more that we can do to celebrate this incredible history and heritage and to connect more to people, connect more as a community to First Nations art and culture. In a world that often feels increasingly polarised, we have a significant opportunity, and I would say a responsibility, to amplify the voices of linguistically and culturally diverse communities and to those who may be marginalised, as we strive to create a community where everyone feels welcome. Let's think about how the future of culture and creativity in North Sydney can not only advance our reconciliation efforts, but also foster a deeper understanding and appreciation of all the cultures that make up our vibrant and diverse community. North Sydney has a very interesting and long history as a creative hub that is not really understood or celebrated enough. So visual artists who have lived and created here, like John Firth Smith or Michael Johnson, Brett Whiteley, and too many more to name, or photographers like David Moore, who lived on Blues Point Road in McMahon's Point, writers from Henry Lawson onwards, to the innovative and leading architects who have shaped this city, like Ken Woolley and Cole Madigan. The development of this culture and creativity strategy marks an important milestone in ensuring that we do better at celebrating our history while we plan together for a shared future. Our iconic harbour location is a significant strength, as is our unique role as the caretakers of much-loved landmarks like the Harbour Bridge and Luna Park. We need to lean further into the cultural and creative potential our location offers and what this means for our future. There are also many untapped creative pathways and opportunities for us to explore with the education sector. North Sydney local government area is the most dense education precinct in the country, and those local schools and colleges are an yet untapped resource for the future of creativity and culture in our local government area. Tonight's panel will be sharing their evidence-based insights to provoke your thoughts so that you can consider what the future of culture and creativity could look like in North Sydney. The panel will be exploring the key themes that are available and raised in the discussion paper, which is on Council's website. They'll be encouraging us all to think outside the box as to what the solutions might be. For example, how can we use our places and spaces differently to encourage greater participation and production? How can we uplift how we partner with local artists and creatives to help them better connect with our community? How can we promote ourselves as a great place for visitors while balancing the needs of our local residents? I'm sure you, like me, are really looking forward to the discussion that the panel will embark on. Before I hand over to Jen, I encourage you all once again to please have your say via the online surveys at Council's website. And I would challenge you once again to encourage at least 3 of your neighbours, colleagues, friends and family to do the same. The more diverse voices who participate in this engagement, the better the outcome. Please, I thank again all of you for joining us this evening and the panel. And shortly you'll be introduced to them by Jen Juice. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Jen Geis. I'm a director with Cred Consulting and I have the pleasure of guiding this discussion tonight on culture and creativity in North Sydney. I too would like to acknowledge the Cammeraygal people, the traditional custodians on the land we're meeting tonight, and pay my respects to elders past and present, and warmly welcome into our digital space any First Nations people joining this conversation. Cred has had the pleasure of working with Council on developing the Culture and Creativity study. We've developed a discussion guide that, as the Mayor said, is online currently, and it's guided by 6 themes. The discussion tonight's going to touch on all of those themes, as does the survey, which I also urge you to complete. It's open until the 23rd of June. One of the things we've discovered about North Sydney through the engagement to date, through our desktop research, is that it already has so many strengths around culture and creativity, not least of which is its location. On the foreshore and the harbour, the beautiful environmental locations that North Sydney has, the places and spaces that North Sydney has are abundant. It has an incredibly rich creative community that the Mayor just spoke about. We have diverse stories, we have diverse sites, and an abundance of community programs, events and activities from which to leverage into the future. Culture and creativity can be difficult to define, and when we do work like this with councils, it's always the first question: what does it mean? For this study, it pretty much means culture and creativity for everyone. You don't have to recognise yourself as a creative to be part of culture and creativity. It could be going to Stanton Library or seeing an event at the Ensemble Theatre. It could be going to Kirribilli Market. It could be going to a gallery or enjoying public art. I'm lucky enough to be energised by culture and creativity every day in my life. I have both a husband and children who are creatives. For me, my happy place is markets on the weekends. I love enjoying art in galleries, and I really enjoy historical walks. I really do enjoy live music, though not as much as I did when I was younger, but I am very much looking forward to seeing iconic band The Dirty Three this week in Sydney. So why don't we meet our panel and see what culture and creativity means to them and what they like to do. We are thrilled to have Meredith Melville-Jones, who's the Director of Bradfield College, with us tonight. Hi, Meredith. Hi. Lucy Keeler, Head of Strategy and Experiences at Luna Park. Welcome, Lucy.
Good evening.
Annette Pittman, CEO of Create New South Wales. Thanks so much for joining us, Annette.
Hello.
And Olivia Arnold, who's a local and practising artist.
Hello.
So I'm going to start with you, Meredith. Tell us a little bit about your role and what culture and creativity means to you. What do you enjoy participating in?
Well, as you said, I'm Director of Bradfield Senior College, which is a senior secondary school that's been in the North Sydney local area for over 32 years. And we are a school for the creative industries. And I've been lucky enough to be the director there for 10 years. So we work very closely with the council, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. I love going to markets. I love shopping. I absolutely love galleries. I have a son who is an artist, so love going to galleries. Do watch a lot of television, I must say. That's not going out so much, but love getting out and walking and being in the community.
We are kindred spirits.
Yes,
See you at the markets.
Yes,
Thanks, Meredith. Olivia.
Hi. Yes, so I'm Olivia Arnold. I'm a local artist living in North Sydney and also working in my studio here as well. So obviously culture and creativity are a huge part of my life, whether that's professionally but also through my enjoyment of living in this beautiful LGA. I'm actually also part of the North Sydney Symphony Orchestra as well, so that's a nice way for me to engage with our community.
What do you play, Olivia?
I play the viola.
Oh, beautiful.
Yes, so that's been a really lovely way to get to know other members of our LGA too. But yes, obviously, huge fan of creativity.
Excellent. Hello, Annette.
Hi there. I'm Annette Pittman. I'm the Chief Executive of Create New South Wales. Create New South Wales is the New South Wales Government's arts organisation. We look after arts and culture across the creative industries and the variety of not-for-profit arts and culture organisations for the state government. So I obviously get to experience lots of amazing arts and culture as part of my job, and I'm incredibly lucky to see a very diverse mix of arts and cultural organisations and activities in the evenings and on the weekends. But I'm also a practicing visual artist on the side.
That's fantastic. I did not know that.
There you
Learned
go.
something. Thank you. Hi, Lucy.
Good evening. My name's Lucy Keeler. I'm the Head of Strategy and Experiences at Luna Park Sydney, which is a very complicated way of saying that we are bringing Luna Park back, sending it backwards to move forwards, essentially. So we have a new team working at Luna Park to discover who we are, really, as a 1935 critical icon for Sydney.
Yeah.
And then move Luna Park into what is a pretty exciting immersive experiences future. So my role is very broad. I have the great absolute privilege of working with Ashley Taylor every day, who is our artist in residence and has been for 30 years. And he comes from a long lineage of forebears in the same role. He calls himself a student of Arthur Barton, who's the original in-park artist who painted the Coney Island is commonly referred to as Arthur Barton's Sistine Chapel. So a long lineage of painters working in the park, and it is our incredible responsibility, and at times very intimidating responsibility, to care for this this incredible asset that is
amazing.
Luna Park Sydney, and that it was down to creatives and artists to save. Martin Sharp and Peter Kingston and their associated artists in the Yellow House Collective all came together as the Friends of Luna Park to save Luna in the 90s. So look, Luna Park is inherently built on the foundation of creativity and art making, and it is connected to a very long history of 600 years of travelling art fairs and contemporary carnivals, and it has a very important place in Sydney. So I have a role at Luna Park which is the hardest but also the greatest job I've ever had, and it's a huge responsibility, and the future is going to be entirely built by artists.
And the future sounds bright. How amazing. All right, well, let's start. I'm going to start with you, Meredith. You're the director of Bradfield Senior College, and I know from personal experience it's a very special creative education institution just outside the North Sydney LGA, but you have a long history with North Sydney Council. What opportunities do you see to support young creatives through partnership and other things with things like councils?
So Bradfield was in the North Sydney area, the old Crow's Nest,
Once
now
upon a time.
Camaragal, yes, where Nicole Kidman went. We were there for 20 years, and I've been with the college for 10 years, and we moved to the fringes, shall we say, of the North Sydney Council area. We specialise in the creative industries, so we do offer the HSC, or everybody does the HSC who comes to Bradfield, and they also do a selection of vocational courses, so design fundamentals, contemporary visual arts, filmmaking, and so on. So a whole range, 10 different creative courses.
Yeah, incredible opportunities.
Great opportunity. So way back when I first started, I was fortunate enough to meet Greg Nicolaitis from Planet X, and we started a partnership very early on with how could we engage young people in the North Sydney local area. And he hit upon a really interesting project with Royal North Shore Hospital, which was their museum, which needed to be, it was sort of dusty, old cabinets, and nobody ever went there. And they gave our students the opportunity to see how they could open it up to the public. And that was the start, really, of an annual project that we do. So we do project-based learning at Bradfield, and it's a creative project. And for 7 years, we were part of Vivid Ideas, so that was fantastic. We had a Creative Careers Day where we brought industry people in to talk to students about different creative careers. And we had Creativity in Education, which was how can we open up real creativity in education, not just major works and that kind of thing. So the connections that we've made with North Sydney Council along the way have really been the partnerships that we've been able to build. Council's role has been to connect us with local artists. So we've had people like Peter Kingston, Jess Gledhill, Jess Burke, Alma Studholme, who did all the wonderful stop motion work last year with our students. Yeah. They come in, we bring industry into the school to work alongside the students, and that enriches their learning. So it's not just them creating something for a mark at the end. This is actually creating a product that for an audience. So audience is the motivator instead of mark being the motivator. And what it does, it enables our students to see beyond the classroom and to their future. And without the council, I don't think we would have been able to develop the project the way we have to, 9 years later, we've just 2 weeks ago held our major event, Spark, which was a film made by 150 students, no mean feat, but our artists collaborating with our filmmakers, bringing industry in to help them with that, digital animation, music composition, and then live music and merchandise. So it's huge event, and what it does is gives students the opportunity to experience a workplace as opposed to a classroom. And without North Sydney Council, so much of that wouldn't have been possible. They connected us with the coal loader, Berry Island. I'll never forget the students coming back from Berry Island with their collections of flora and fauna that they'd either sketched or photographed. And then they put them into Photoshop and created fabrics, which they then used for tea towels and tote bags. And that was the start of our merchandise range that we have each
I have some of that merchandise.
I'm sure you do, with jellyfish, no doubt. So that excursion to Berry Island
Amazing.
was really formative for them. We've also done Wendy Whiteley's Secret Garden. We had a wonderful project with aged care homes as well, where we went in and asked all of the residents there to tell us their secrets. And that was a pretty amazing filmmaking project that we did as well. And I think the council's role in that, certainly they've provided artists in residence for us. It's all about the connections and the partnerships and building, and really truly building a creative community so that our students can then see what it might look like. Creative industries is hard, and so it gives them an opportunity to connect with community, connect with industry, and start to build a portfolio as they move out into the workforce and further study.
I love the way that Bradfield allows opportunity for kids who might want to do pure creativity, but also to sell their merchandise.
Yes.
It's sort of the breadth of event management as well as, it's a real life creativity. Thanks, Meredith. Olivia, being a young and practising artist in this LGA, you obviously emerged in the North Sydney area. What would you like to see in the future done more or better to help encourage and promote young artists?
Yeah, basically in the last year, I've been lucky enough to be an artist in residence at the Ridge Street Artist Studios. So I guess plenty more of that. It's been a really incredible opportunity to just really settle into a space. My practice specifically is really led by my environment, so it's site-specific, and I guess throughout COVID, when we had lockdowns, I was spending a lot of time walking around our local area, and that was really inspiring for me for the suburban landscapes and the natural environment. So then being able to have a studio space that was within walking distance of home,
incredible.
that was really incredible. So having that proximity, having the the price of it was really great too. It was subsidised by council. That's a pretty important area of supporting artists as well. The financial constraints of being an artist can be a huge reason why people stop making work. So it's been really important, I think, in terms of my progression as an artist in the last year. And apart from that, North Sydney Council have been really committed to providing professional development opportunities for me and all the other artists who were chosen. So there's been opportunities for hosting workshops at Stanton Library, artist talks. We also had a curator's bus tour that came through all of the artist studios too, so we could meet industry professionals and really have those networking opportunities.
So important.
So it wasn't just provide the space, it was really thoughtfully designed to make sure that we were getting the most out of the opportunity. So plenty more of that would be great. I was also a recipient of one of the cultural grants in the last year too, so that allowed me to document my whole residency project, which was drawing silhouettes and shadows of the urban environment around North Sydney. So that grant went towards the producing of a book, which was then printed and is now available at Stanton Library. So that's also available for the community to go and borrow as well. So yeah, there's all these kind of links, I guess, that allow a really broad, rich experience.
Incredible
as part of
opportunities.
The residency programs, yeah. So I'd love to see more spaces being turned into artist residency spaces. Ridge Street as well. We had the window gallery downstairs too, so I was able to do an exhibition there. yes, so I've really reaped the benefits. I've milked it for all it's worth last year.
Good for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth doing, and I'd encourage more artists to apply for the residencies. I know the Call is going to be opening up soon too, so definitely worth
What an amazing
having.
space that is.
Yeah.
Your story is so inspirational in terms of an emerging artist and all those opportunities you've had. How incredible. Probably people listening don't even realise that those opportunities exist for young people. It's just amazing. Thanks, Olivia. Lucy, I'm interested to understand what you see for the future, if there is a future in collaboration or partnerships with schools and iconic places like Luna Park, like amazing.
It's interesting to listen to you, Olivia, because that's a very, I know your practice very well, and traditional studio-based art making is a really critical part of our creative ecosystem. There's also another section which is certainly my focus, and I came from studio-based practice, but curiosity's always led me into cross-genre art making, and that has led to a really unique position to be able to look at who's doing what, right, and put groups of people together to fund them to make work that's greater than the sum of its parts. So education is absolutely vital. We're at this incredible precipice, and I'm talking Sydney-wide, Australia-wide, even region-wide at the moment, where there is a new genre of creativity and art making, which is putting together visual artists, animators, creative technologists, musicians, live performers to make things which are all of them and are as a result of all of their specializations greater than the sum of their parts. And at the moment we have an incredible situation which we are going to overcome in time, I believe, where a lot of the great, really big, really hard opportunities for creatives across most of our creative industries are offshore, because we, as a nation, we prioritise things that we don't know that we need until we see them, and then, we will, if Annette and I achieve something, really it will be demonstrating that actually some of the best creatives, technicians, technologists in the world live in Australia. We often lose them to great opportunities overseas. So a campaign for us, certainly at Luna Park, I work with a very clever guy called John Hughes, and he used to run Fox Studios for Disney, so he comes from film world. I come from another world. I come from the vivid and the creative technology art making with light world. And when you put our genres together, what we've noticed is that we need to grow some roots into the ground. So at the moment at Luna Park, we've invested more than $15 million in the last 12 months into creatives, into the creative industries, and directly to artists to make really interesting work. But what we need to do next, and we are working on as fast and hard as we can, is build pathways, vocational pathways that people can see. So a new education program has been built. I have another meeting with the arts unit tomorrow to build specifically curriculum-linked education programs for what is the future of art, from year 5 to year 12, so stage 3 to stage 6, but then pathways into NIDA, UTS, we're talking to TAFE, and cross-genre. I mean, we can grow live performance, we can give opportunities to musicians, we can do anything, right? And we now have the most unique asset of its kind, which is Sydney's Immersive Big Top. And that's a training ground, and Luna Park has a responsibility to Sydney to be an asset. We all own Luna Park, right? All of us, we all own Luna Park.
So
right?
excited by that.
It is Sydney's asset, and it has such a wonderful foundation for artists trying things, training things, and the Sydney Opera House is right over the water, right? The Sydney Opera House is a lovely bridge, and then there's a park. And the park has a responsibility to our creative outlook. All the very grown-up, polished professionals can go and perform at Sydney Opera House. Just go, right? Luna Park needs to do something else. There isn't really anywhere else where people can come through secondary school, coming to Luna Park, trying things, displaying their work, performing for audiences. We have over 1 million people come through Luna Park. That's a ready-made audience,
Yeah.
right? Come and show your work to this audience. They are a curious audience, and they might be there for a roller coaster. They might be there for a dream circus. They might be there for a mad sound and light experience. Whatever brought them there, please surprise them. You know, that's our job, is to surprise them. I mean, as a creative industry, our job is to surprise people and give them the thing that they didn't know that they need. You know, it's that show you watched by accident that turned out to be the greatest thing you watched this year. That is our job. Don't give them the thing that, you know, oh, yeah, I really love that painting. Let's look at that painting again. No, it's I saw that painting, I continue to love that painting, but gee, that musician was incredible. Surprising people, and I need to grow artists. You know, Annette needs to support, and I need to give opportunity. If for us, it's about turning artists into businesses, right? You can have your practice, that's lovely, but actually you can't survive as an artist unless you earn as an artist.
Yeah,
Because
growing
then you
them
can
from
afford to make
from the
your
young
work.
up.
You
Amazing.
absolutely have to be a thriving business, which also means that at Luna Park we need to grow you, train you, and pay you to make your work. You know, we are investors in work. We're growing artists, we're excited about the future. North Sydney has a wonderful history of creativity, and it continues
incredible.
to today.
Yeah.
It's something we should be celebrating. This should not turn into a session about what council needs to do for us creatively. No, this is about actually giving ourselves a shot, right? Make time for your practice. Everybody has a creative practice.
And you get to
Call
walk through
yourself
that
not an
face
artist, I promise you are.
every day. So inspiring. Your energy is palpable, and how exciting that this state-owned asset with the big crazy face, that everybody has a story to tell at Luna Park. You know, we're all connected to it in some way. It's just amazing to hear the passion for culture and creativity coming from you. Thank you so much. Annette, I'm really interested to understand from your perspective, you see a lot of what's going on right across the state. So back to sort of fostering young people and culture and creativity for young people in a place like North Sydney, have you seen great examples of that being done elsewhere, where that sort of ecosystem for young people, the pathway is just made clear?
I think we're, so, you know, our job, I guess, at a state level is creating partnerships to create an enabling environment where people like Olivia can go and do what they love.
Yes.
And it's such an exciting opportunity. And we've just finished our state government's first arts, culture, and creative industries policy, which I'm really excited about, because it's about leveraging the core arts and cultural creatives and really radiating that out throughout our entire ecosystem of creativity, and not just limiting that to the people who have chosen to do arts as a full-time practice, but really broadening that out into the creative industries, into the ancillary parts of the arts and creative ecosystem. And so, you know, a lot of that is there's two sides of creating education opportunities. Yes, there's about creating opportunities for young artists and for people throughout their career to have a lifelong engagement with arts and culture and a lifelong learning journey for arts and culture. But it's also about creating a talent pipeline for our incredible creative industries that are, you know, many of which are dying for a workforce that is skilled and educated. And so putting together that enabling environment to ensure that we have a workforce fit for the jobs of the future in the areas that we know we can really excel at, but also providing those pathways for young creative people who are going to do things that we can't even imagine right now. And the young people who are coming up through the pipeline now, their careers are going to be, we're not able to imagine what their careers are going to be like, because the speed of technology and the speed of change and the speed of opportunity and their own creativity creates such an amazing opportunity to really expand what the creative environment looks like. And so right now in New South Wales, 10% of the whole workforce of New South Wales is in the creative industries.
Incredible.
And that is growing at more than twice the rate of other industries in Australia. And so we have a great opportunity to create an enabling environment for people to really, make that theirs. And, but there are things that are needed in order to do that. And we've talked about education. Space is a big one.
Yes, that was my next question.
and it's a critical ingredient, and we hear it over and over and over again. It's space for making and space for we've done a lot of work in creating performance spaces and in creating spaces to experience a finished product. But at the same time as we've been, investing in places like Walsh Bay and Sydney Modern Museum, there's been a diminishment across Sydney of space available for people to make art, and that with the cost of living and the cost of property is an incredible headwind that people like Olivia, the young people, the creative workforce of the future, are really facing. And so the only way that we're going to arrest that is through creative partnerships between Luna Park and the state government and the local LGA and creatives and education organizations. There's great opportunities if we stick together, and there's wonderful things that an LGA can do to create that enabling environment for the growth of creativity in their own area.
Amazing. Olivia, you told us earlier offline that you're leaving your studio at the end of this week. So, space for you is just, front of mind right now. What does it mean for an artist when, it's closing down that space and you have to look for another space, and you live in a certain area, you've established your creative networks here? What is it, the impact on your practice?
I mean, it's been very sad this week.
Yeah, I bet.
Picking everything up. One, I guess, sort of lovely benefit of being a part of that program is meeting all the other artists who were in the studios. So I was sharing with an artist, Millie Mitchell, who I'd kind of been on in my network through printmaking, but we really got to know each other very well through the last year, and now we're trying to find somewhere together, which we've got to find somewhere that's going to suit both of us. She's in Annandale and I'm in North Sydney. So that can have its troubles, I guess, and then obviously cost of living as well. That's front of mind for both of us. So I think we're kind of looking around at similar opportunities, residencies through councils, or I've even done a residency before through a commercial photography studio where these sort of local businesses, I guess, can
interesting
have
spaces.
Spare space that they can have either free or for a cheaper price, I guess, than a standard studio. But yeah, there's a lot of factors that I think people don't consider when artists are looking for space. Things like whether the environment is going to be safe for the artwork is one main thing. I mean, there's a lot of huge old factories. There's a lot of studios in the inner west, which is where I've had a studio before as well. But you're not necessarily getting somewhere that's archivally sound. There might be issues with damp or mold or There might not be sort of temperature regulation. There's all those kinds of aspects. Whether you're sharing a space with other artists who, even just from a safety point of view, if you're dealing with fumes, that kind of thing. So aerated spaces, there's lots of different factors that need to be considered when you're finding a space. But really, front of mind is always going to be cost at the moment. It can be quite a struggle. For now, I'm probably going to be working from home on my dining table for a little while until we can find somewhere that's going to be perfect for us. But it really does impact, I guess, my next few months of making. I probably won't be able to make as much as I normally do. And I guess I've been sort of spoilt for the last year, really, because I haven't had to work my other job where I'm subsidising my income as much. So that will kind of fall into things too for the next few months. So yeah, it all kind of impacts.
It really does impact,
it really
quite
does.
significantly.
Yeah.
Meredith, you're fostering people who are going to become practicing artists in various forms. What do you see, if you follow them once they leave your beautiful environment, what do you see the types of spaces they need might be? Especially given that pace of change that Annette was talking about.
Certainly studios and studio space. And one of the people, we had the wonderful creative conversations last week, and a few of our students came along to talk about that. And
great they were there.
And one of the students who I don't think I'd spoken very much to at all was really found their voice at the event, and said they are in fashion and create a lot of fashion pieces, and they simply can't afford the money for a market. And so subsidised markets for them is something that would be really useful while they're finding their feet and growing their and so on. Music studios, obviously. So the St Leonard's Creative Precinct in Atchison Lane has been a place that we've also drawn a lot of people from, and that's a wonderful opportunity for artists and so on to be a part of a really great creative community. And of course, from there they had the block parties. So our students, the car parks, so the abandoned car parks waiting to be developed, were activated, and we had our film shown there, and markets and music and so on. So they're the sorts of things, opportunities, I think, for engaging the community when they simply don't have the money, simply the cost of living, the rent. Finding those sorts of spaces where they can really grow their art in their early days is really the most important thing.
And you're mostly working with sort of 17, 18-year-olds,
16
right?
to 16 to 18.
So no money whatsoever.
No money, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Lucy, how do we matchmake? How do we find the spaces and match them to the artists, do you think? Because council obviously can't provide all the spaces, so there has to be matches made in heaven using, like as Olivia suggested, other people's studio space or office spaces. Any ideas?
Space is at a premium with our tiny little fun park. But so I think space is probably, I'm not the best person to jump into a conversation about space. What I will say, though, is that we've come to the end of a term of the contemporary thing, which is an artist working by themselves.
Yeah.
I think there's been a long-held understanding that an artist or a creative person needs to be long-suffering and alone.
Tortured.
And I just think that that's so... Not only do people misunderstand this concept, because it's actually a very modern thing, the concept of a long-suffering, alone artist in their studio by themselves and poor is actually really modern. It's very contemporary. Traditionally, back, in the Renaissance and every decade since, it's been an atelier system. You work in groups, you learn your craft from the master craftsman, and then you work your way up, to now I'm graduated, I can paint the trees. And next time, you work your way up to being the one that can paint the hands, right? That's such a long-held system.
Yeah.
And actually, in today's day and age, the most successful art practices that are touring international artists and just happen to be Australian. They're all working in groups. You know, we fund many groups of creative professionals who are all artists, but they found other artists they love to work with. So really interesting that you say that you found someone that you like sharing a space with, because inevitably you're going to make each other buoyant, you're going to work harder, you're going to show up for each other, you're going to chat, you're going to share ideas and go, hey, I found this new way of making this thing, maybe you could try it, and maybe you'll be funded one day to make a collaborative work. Some of the most interesting work is the thing that you all made together, and it is many pieces of everybody's DNA, but it is greater than all of you.
Yeah.
And I think that we need a cultural shift, and I'm very concerned about the amount that we as a society have invested into fine, polished display spaces for big international blockbuster touring exhibitions or big international touring shows. And I think that we as a culture need to take a minute, right, and say, well, actually, we have some of the greatest creative minds in the world in our own space, in our own community, in our own network of friends, probably. And unless we let artists actually make work in Australia and give them that grassroots opportunity and the time and the support, and if it's as simple as giving Olivia somewhere for printmaking, like, that's a very simple ask for Olivia and probably all of your colleagues. It's such a simple thing, and what that means is it lays a foundation on which we have people making work, right? We need to keep you making your work. We can't afford to have you pulling beers down the road.
No.
We need you in your studio. And if you need a studio, for heaven's sake, give the girl a studio.
I think it's really interesting what you're saying in terms of the spaces, in that in the future we might need to look at spaces that are collaborative more, rather than this single garage door, lock yourself in, how depressing.
Because you're expanding your network anyway. I mean, even just having that sort of emotional support between artists is really important.
Yeah.
There can be a lot of rejection, and sometimes it's just about commiserating together and moving forward with the next step. But for each of us, we also have our own communities, and if we're getting information and sort of sharing all of this collective knowledge, we can then be passing that on to our wider communities too.
Yeah.
So I think staying connected is really important. I know when I finished art school, I panicked a little bit and just went straight into full-time work in a completely different job because I didn't really back myself, and I hadn't surrounded myself with people at that time, or I didn't dive straight into trying to find a collaborative studio. And in the last few years, that's been so transformative for me. I think it's a really important thing to stay connected with your arts community.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely.
Yeah, and definitely something for any future artists,
Emerging artists.
future graduates. That's the first thing I would recommend.
Yeah. The collaboration at Bradfield's incredible, isn't it? The kids are always working together.
Well, that's right. That's why 150 students making a film is and it's not without its challenges.
No.
But part of the reason we do it also is for them to build general capabilities, transferable skills, so problem solving, so that we know that they're good at their art and they're incredibly talented and creative. But I think the thing is working together and making creative decisions, and having to give up your creative decision because somebody else has a stronger one. It's navigating all of those things which we find are really important, because that builds resilience in people, as you know, is much needed. And so I'm really looking forward to Create New South Wales and what comes out of the programs that you're
together?
running. Look, I so do.
You heard it first here.
We have a 90th birthday
Love
next
it.
year. I'm not kidding.
Oh, me either.
I mean, so Luna Park turns 90 next year.
We're in.
And it should be Sydney's living canvas for its 90th birthday. And if we could start with you and 150 artists, we have Sydney's Immersive Big Top is the biggest canvas you've ever seen, and it's a living, moving one. And we could make the biggest artwork that this country's ever seen. And not just starting with the students, but all right, I'm calling all of you. Every artist in this local community, Luna Park's yours. Why don't we all make a communal artwork that we show for the 90th birthday. You've got, well, it's next October, so you've got over a year. And why don't we formalise it? I'll put a call out, and we should do something pretty significant.
Amazing. Momentous moment.
Next
You heard it here
government should
first.
open
My
it
head
for us.
teacher, Kim Covert, is sitting at home watching this, and I know she's squealed with delight.
We will do another one of these panels at the opening. Annette.
I think it's, as someone who works from my own dining table, I know how incredibly constraining that is. And we've recently opened 10 new artist studios at the Gunnery, which is Art Space's new space. And so each artist gets to use the space for a year. And what's really incredible is there's an artist in there now who is, for the first time in her, she's a mid-career artist, for the first time in her career, she's working at scale. And the reason she can do that is because she's got a studio with a goods lift, with a big door, with all the things that you need in order to actually get big work in and out of that space. And there are incredible examples of internationally of partnerships to develop studio space, rehearsal space. We've talked a lot about the visual arts. In the performing arts, the rehearsal space is an absolute premium. And so we've recently we're partnering with the City of Sydney on a Creative Lands Trust idea, which is the development of a partnership between the state and local government and philanthropists to basically create a new entity to hold land and hold properties that are either gifted by the state and local governments or bought by that trust, and that trust then manages the availability of that space for the purpose of the arts community. And it's been incredibly successful in San Francisco and Austin and London and Helsinki. And this is an idea that we have every expectation will go well beyond the Sydney LGA.
Yeah.
This is for New South Wales, a really great opportunity to leverage a different model to provide more space for artists by artists. And so I think for us, it's kind of thinking outside the square. We've done a really great partnership with UTS. They had their old library they're going to redevelop in 5 years or so. And so we partnered with them. We took a lease on the space, and we've subleased that now to 30 arts organizations. And it's everything from Blackfella Films, who does Total Control, incredible,
so good,
incredible First Nations filmmaking enterprise, to Sydney Youth Orchestra. It's a very broad group of organizations in there. The house that Dan built. And the really cool thing about that is drives that collaboration that you were talking about, Olivia, and builds a richness in a community and a cohort of organizations and of artists who would never, necessarily connect with each other otherwise. And you can curate that to really be an incredibly powerful catalyst for the growth of individual businesses and individual practices, but also the sector more broadly for in a local ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. How exciting! Which leads me to this very big day for you. It is budget day. So, yeah, you must be exhausted. Massive day. But I'm interested to understand, the strategic directions from the state around culture and creativity. But how does that relate, and how can that relate to a place like, or a council area like North Sydney?
So I did mention that we just finished our new arts, culture, and creative industries policy, Creative Communities. And that really sets a framework for partnerships. It's a whole of government policy. It sets that framework for really close partnerships with the private sector, with councils, and with individual arts organizations and individual artists, and really kind of sets that framework for the future. I think, though, all these things, if you're looking at a single entity kind of driving something, you're only going to get the bandwidth of what that one organization can do. And in a resource-constrained environment, that's incredibly limiting, frankly. And so this is all about partnerships and all about collaboration. And I think, each part of government has their own role to play. So at the state government level, we're about creating an enabling environment. We run some programs we fund directly arts organizations and artists, but the real power in what we do is through the collaborations that we have with others. And I think, like, at a local government level, so much of the regulatory environment in particular that enables the ability for arts organizations and for artists to be able to occupy space and to do their work and to thrive sits with the local government. And so those regulatory powers can be really powerful in sparking the growth of your local creative ecosystem here. I also think that there's, a really great opportunity. Like, we've been looking at state government owns an enormous amount of buildings, and looking at the way that we can take buildings that maybe weren't fit for purpose anymore, and whether they're old courthouse buildings or they're old TAFE buildings, or there's so many disused buildings that are not getting leveraged, and would be really good, safe places for making art, for rehearsal space, and really trying to crack that open in partnership with the landholding organizations. And we've been pretty successful at that in the past, and that's been a real focus for us going forward.
Yeah, that's incredible and really exciting. So I would say to anyone at home with a space, let us know via the survey, because unlocking those will just be so amazing, particularly in dense environments like North Sydney, which is a nice segue into my next question. But before I go there, I'm going to invite people from home. If you have any questions, please send them through to the Slido. The QR code is on your screen. So North Sydney is one of the most densely populated LGAs, and its population is set to increase by about 17% in the next 20 years. So becoming more densely populated, particularly around the new metro stations. It's also an incredibly diverse community. Around 40% of the population in North Sydney are born overseas, which I don't think is really reflected in people's thinking around North Sydney in particular. So those sort of stories haven't been told yet. The multicultural stories of North Sydney really haven't been told yet. So I'm interested, just opening it up to all of you, how you think culture and creativity plays a role, firstly, in bringing people together in high density areas like North Sydney. But secondly, the really important role, how can culture and creativity tell those diverse stories, particularly as we're emerging as a community? Any thoughts?
I'm happy to jump in.
Thanks, Annette.
For us, and I think for the state government, culture and community and creativity starts with First Nations people.
Yeah.
So, the First Nations culture, arts culture, creativity is so embedded in First Nations culture, and our sort of key pillar for our policy is prioritize First Nations culture, arts and culture, and I think there's a lot that we can do to support and engage with First Nations people around the celebration of their arts and culture, and I think our community is richer for that.
Yeah.
But as you say, we have very diverse. We have a very diverse community in North Sydney, and the opportunity to really embrace that and to create an environment of equity and inclusion, and expand our minds to enable that diversity to come through in the work that we celebrate and in the work that we support. I think can really build a richness.
Yeah.
And we do that in food, right?
Yes.
Really
we don't, well in food.
We don't eat, I don't eat American food every night. It would kill me. I'd probably have a coronary by now. We don't eat the food from our own culture. We eat food from all cultures. And we do that because it's amazing. And that diversification of our food it's an analogy, but it's the same thing, isn't it? Like being able to experience the cultural products from other ethnicities, and embracing that and supporting that and growing that, and enables us as a community not only to be richer and fuller, but also just to be that delight and that surprise that you talked about. If we're looking at the same thing, if we're experiencing the same music, if we're doing the same thing over and over, you don't get that surprise and delight. And that's what having a multicultural community does for us.
Surprise. Do you feel that iconic places like Luna Park have been here since 1935, did you say? Incredible. And, the community's grown around Luna Park and it's really diverse. Do you feel like Luna Park can represent those cultures in, the diversity of the people around it in a cultural and creative way?
It's probably the greatest question of all, actually. And it goes to the heart of a lot of things, because it's more than being a variety of backgrounds. It's about being a variety of human experience. So what we've been looking at, because historically it's an amusement park, and we are known for rides. Historically, you come to Luna Park to go on a ride, right? And we have beautiful historic rides, and anybody who's interested in that kind of thing it's there for you, and it has always been there for you. I don't like rides.
No.
I don't like rides.
I like the face.
I know this is a great confession from someone who goes every single day of their life to Luna Park, Sydney, but one of the conditions of taking the job, because I'm also, responsible for research and insights and all those things, there's a little line in there. I said, just so long as that never involves ever going on a roller coaster. It's just not what I'm into, which actually means when you boil that down, it means that historically Luna Park has been something that is arms open and welcoming to 12-year-olds and nostalgic dads.
Yeah.
And actually it doesn't look welcoming to everybody, and there's nothing there for me. So what we have done is say, right, what is it that goes to the core of the human experience? What is Luna Park for? Luna Park is there for escapism and joy. And that should be for everybody, right? It shouldn't just be for someone who likes spinning around very quickly. And actually, anyone can walk into Luna Park. That's the other thing, right? It is free to walk into Luna Park. Anyone can go and experience the park. It doesn't cost anything. Yes, you've got to chip in to go on a ride, but there's also, it's never been enough. So what we have been actively doing is, what is it to be inclusive? What is it to be inclusive is to actually give everybody something to enjoy there, because Luna Park is everybody's. Everybody should have something to do there to give them a purpose for going. So we're looking at what is it to tell our story, so that an older community can come back and have a beautiful experience of what does Luna Park mean to you, and maybe step through the stories of the history of Luna Park and the history of the art making. That should be there for, everybody.
Yeah, you've tweaked my interest with that. Absolutely.
But then immersive experiences, you don't have to spin around very quickly.
Yes.
You literally come in and step into another world. It is escapism and joy at its core.
Amazing.
But it doesn't involve going on a ride. So actually that makes it accessible and inclusive to everybody.
Yeah.
Which is what we are there for. So it goes way beyond culture, way beyond, what is your heritage? It is, what is it to be a human being who wants to have a little bit of fun.
And be surprised.
And be surprised.
Olivia?
I mean, I'm just thinking back to the exhibition program that was in the Ridge Street Window Gallery, and one of the artists in residence at Primrose Park, Sharud, had this beautiful exhibition that was all looking at sort of motherhood and themes of maternal energy, and it was very universal. She was using a lot of cultural symbols and markers of her Iranian heritage, and just seeing the way that people were so engaged with it, mothers pushing their kids in their prams, and they were just stopping, and they were so, I guess, enamored looking at this work. And I think it's just about having these diverse artists and creatives' work be really visible. And spaces like the Window Gallery, where it's visible at all times, that's really amazing.
Accessible.
So I think, it's integrating it within community and also really highlighting those stories. And I think it's making it visible. That's the core part of it, really, that everybody should know that these people live in this area, they're working in this area. I think that's really important.
So there's been a theme already that, culture and creativity is inherently inclusive because it is of the human experience. So it sort of doesn't matter if we're representing culture necessarily, although that is a welcoming experience for people of different cultures, but it is of a human experience. Meredith, you have a diverse range of students at your college. You just look at them and you can see the culture and creativity oozing. So in terms of that inclusivity, accessibility and diversity, have you got thoughts around the role that culture and creativity plays in bringing people together like that?
Yeah, well, our students come from around 180 suburbs across Sydney, so they come to live and to study in the area, if you like, and so they're going through the train stations and every day and through on the buses and so on. Inclusivity for our students, inclusivity is a lot about the LGBT community, as well as some diverse cultures, but more so identity and being able to be who you are. I think that's one of the key things for the students at our school is really understanding themselves and being able to be comfortable being themselves as opposed to what a school expects them to be.
Yes, it's a very safe place.
And so then being able to give them the opportunity to find their voice and to then experience the community, experience and tell stories from within the community. I think that's the important role for Bradfield at least, and education, and helping them to learn more about the people who live and work in this area as well.
Yeah, incredible. I mentioned the density and population growth that's coming to North Sydney, and the way we live is changing, and we know that particularly around train stations and there's a couple of new metro stations coming to North Sydney, it's becoming more and more dense, probably more and more high, which has benefit. But it also brings challenges, particularly around social connection and those sorts of things. And I'm just wondering if any of you have a thought about the role of culture and creativity, or what North Sydney can do to bring people together through culture and creativity in high density places, particularly around our sort of city centres.
I think being able to participate in arts and cultural activities is an escape, right? And it's an escape in lots of different ways. And I think, the North Sydney uses all of its cultural infrastructure to provide that platform, whether it's the library or whether it's the halls, rooms like this, can all provide a space where people can come together and experience that escape. And as the suburb densifies, that's all the more important for people to have places to go where they can connect with other people, where they can be social, and where they can escape and enjoy that experience. And so I would encourage the council to embrace that, and I think it's a great opportunity to really look at how can the community come together, and as it densifies, no doubt that brings in more opportunities to do that, but also to look at, well, as buildings get built and as the suburb densifies, how do you create spaces within those new developments to enable people to come together? And council has the ability to use its influence with developers and with property owners to incentivize that to happen. So I would encourage that.
Incredible. Any thoughts from you, Olivia, around that? Do you live in high density in the LGA?
So I'm just near Ensemble Theatre, so I'm in an area where there's quite a lot of high rises. So yes, I think, I guess maybe someone of my demographic as well, as a renter, as a young person. It's, I guess in my community, there's a lot of people who are around my age, but they don't think of North Sydney as a place to live. Maybe once they get a little bit older. I think it can be a little bit of a forgotten area in some ways, but it's definitely, there's going to be more people. I think that there's going to also be great opportunities to use how big this LGA is as well. There's so many areas that are sort of untapped. I mean, I live right near Subbase Platypus, and I would love to see that become a cultural precinct. There's areas that I think could be a great collaboration between the Harbour Trust and North Sydney Council as exhibition spaces, as artist studios, and really utilising spaces that not just seasonally as well. So maybe, say, the Coal Loader, host of the North Sydney Art Prize every year, there's a residency there, but could there be exhibition space throughout the year? Is that something that could be all the time, so that then we're drawing people out into these different areas across the whole year as the population increases, and really spreading everything so that it's manageable as well.
Yeah, so as the population increases, the need for more spaces. We just come back to spaces. So important. I'm checking if we have any questions from the audience. No? So one of the, sort of moving on related to a change in population, at the moment, North Sydney is has a very strong population of young professionals who possibly rent in apartments, who they may work in the area or come in and out just, to come to and from work. But what we hear is that they are not necessarily connected to understanding what is on offer in North Sydney, and we know there's already so much on offer. And I'm interested in understanding, this is a bit of a marketing question, but understand how do we get to a demographic like that, a young professionals demographic who's not really connected necessarily with council, they might not even own in the LGA, to actually be involved in culture and creativity in the space. Any thoughts?
I could probably take that if you like.
Thanks, Lucy.
We're doing a lot of work around what is it for Luna, not just to connect into the wider North Sydney area, which we are doing, but also what responsibility do we have to the nighttime economy, right? So historically, Luna Park was the one place you could go more than 30 years before women could drink at public bars. And, it opened in the Great Depression when it was more than 20 years before colour television came to Australia. And actually it was the only place other than the SCG to watch a game of cricket where you could actually go out to have fun. Now what that meant is that it was this cheeky, mischievous little breeding ground for people to be out after dark, and your date that you have had your crush on, you could accidentally hold hands or accidentally push into each other by a centrifugal force. But what it meant is that there was this delicious, romantic, after-dark culture historically at Luna Park, which, the thing, times change, and right now there isn't a vibrant after-dark nightlife in Kirribilli, really. I mean, we will get back there, and part of the work that we are doing to get there is to explore what is it for us to become a purple flag precinct. And we believe that, you know, when the pool's up and running and when Luna Park has some really great nighttime activity, because historically we've also been a concert venue, and we are exploring actively what is it to be the concert venue of the future. What is it for, again, cross-genre art making between, you know, immersive projection mapped animation with really interesting music, and what is it to be in the mind of the musician while they make their music? What is it to be in a living video clip? And that we're going to start building a really interesting after dark destination at Luna Park. But to make that safe, I think, is absolutely vital.
Yeah.
So for young people, women in particular, or anybody that's travelled a long distance to come to Luna Park, which people really do, it's how do you get there safely? How do you have a really great night? And how do you safely get home? That's the work that we're currently doing, and that's a really big part of our future.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. Is we've talked about accessibility and inclusivity, but then, you know, where do you go and how do you get there? And communicating that to young people particularly, so important. Any other comments around that particular demographic and getting to reach them? Because we now have some Q&A come from the audience. Thank you.
I think some of the things that our students were talking about would be having regular open mic sessions for performers and musicians. So
I love
again,
that you asked them, Meredith.
they were really keen on that, and obviously the market thing. But another one was interactive playground equipment that they could get involved in. Green space into installations, and surprises along the way for your journey through the area. So when you're on public transport and going through the different metro stations and things, little surprises that might pop up and delight you as you're going through. So
yes,
that obviously they would like to be a part of making.
Fantastic. Another theme of surprise and joy. Oh, great.
Yes.
So let's go to some of the questions from our audience. Thank you. Isn't it weird to think there's people out there watching us? All right, let's go. Here we have, how can we better leverage our unique harbour location to provide more cultural opportunities similar to the City of Sydney, for example, outdoor cinema on the water? And you've already talked about, I think Meredith and Olivia, you both talked about being inspired by the location, particularly the nature and that sort of thing. How do we leverage the location? Any thoughts?
I mean, I would love to see some sort of arts festival or biennale of sorts, I guess, along the ferry route, whether that's engaging with Sydney Ferries or the Harbour Trust. There's some really incredible, interesting architecture happening along near North Sydney Wharf, Kirribilli Wharf, and does that then tie in with Luna Park as well? And it's also just a reminder to Sydney-siders over the bridge as well that it's close, you know? I think sometimes that's maybe a bit of a myth that North Sydney and Nelson's Point, Kirribilli, it's over the bridge, so it's too far, but it's one stop from the city. Like, it's really very close. So I think maybe it's engaging the transport systems as well, spreading things out. It could be a really interesting.
Yeah, amazing connections.
Yeah.
And
I really want an art ferry.
an art ferry sounds amazing.
Really want an art ferry.
We have a discussion.
We will make this happen. It is so ripe.
You heard
for
it here again.
We are so ripe for it in Sydney.
Yeah.
And you could just think about how that could join together, and create a really amazing journey through all of the amazing arts institutions that we have along the waterfront on both sides of the harbour.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer.
And all the way down the river as well.
Absolutely.
Incredible.
Absolutely. It is. It's an absolute no-brainer, and it will happen someday. And we just
Lucy's
keep
bursting
pushing for
here.
No, we absolutely, yes. I mean, yes, let's do that.
For God's sake, Hobart has one.
Yes.
Come on.
Yeah, we need a monorama.
ferry,
First of all, we need a monorama version inherently very
Sydney.
Sydney. I mean,
Yes.
look, honestly, do we not live in the greatest harbour in the world?
Beautiful.
And this LGA, is the boundary of that beautiful harbour. I love the water question. I mean, what is it to exist on the water side? I mean, that is inherently who we are as an identity as Sydney-siders. We are a water people. So I've got to behave myself. And there's no big announcements today. We are actively pursuing, we believe that there needs to be a really unique, interesting vessel living alongside Luna Park. There is a section of our zoning which actually has a little piece of harbour, so we can park something there. And historically, there's been the Palais de Danse, which has had a wonderful, rich history of balls and dances and these.
Beautiful.
But what is it to park a really unique vessel there, which then becomes a hub for creativity actually on the water? So that's something we're exploring, but I can't announce anything yet. But we also have been actively discussing what is it to connect directly into Circular Quay and maybe also to other destinations around the harbour. Like you should be able to get on a Sydney version of the Mona Roma and go on an adventure. Go somewhere that you maybe didn't think you were going to end up and find something that you didn't plan to find, and go home having, it wasn't what I thought it was, this Sydney that I probably have lived in my whole entire life but never found that thing before.
Yeah, amazing. Will we have sheep on our little Mona Roma?
We'll have our own stuff.
Yes. Okay, great question, thank you. Next question. That private schools like Shaw and Loreto in this LGA have amazing performing arts facilities. How can we pry these open for public-facing art? It's such a great question.
I'm not sure I can take that one.
Let's skip Meredith.
Just from my experience in North Sydney Symphony, we have often used the Shaw facilities for concerts as well. So that's just an example.
It's happening, so good. Yeah.
I think, but maybe it's also just advertising that more to the public. I think sometimes it can feel a bit intimidating, maybe if you're also not part of the private school culture too, to then be entering those spaces. But yeah, I think it can be something that's integrated more into our experience of culture, because there's so many families who are living around here too, that I think the more cross contact we have, that the better it will be. Yeah.
If we care about the environment, it is far more ecologically sustainable to leverage the facilities that we have
and build
to their absolute maximum limit. And I think we can, I think breaking down those barriers, and I'm sure that the schools that you mentioned are already doing community activities, but looking at ways with all infrastructure that is sort of in some kind of private hands, creating ways that it makes it easy for the organization that manages it to open it up, and sometimes it's a matter of resources. Some, the organizations, it's not their core business, right, to have to coordinate the use of these facilities, and sometimes it's just a matter of making it a bit easier to make those connections for them. So I mean, I think that's it's worth a conversation about what would it take to maximize the use of facilities. Are they already being used every single day? If not, what can we do to make it happen?
And this is a conversation not just about arts and culture, right? It's about all spaces. They need to have multi-purpose now. Yeah. Okay. I think we have time for possibly 2 more questions. So let me find one. We've covered off on a lot of these, which is so fantastic. Here's an interesting one, and I'll open it to you to start with, Annette, and it's around how do we meaningfully engage with our First Nations community to tell their stories?
I think meaningfully is probably the key word there. We are absolutely committed to deep partnership with First Nations people, self-determination on the part of First Nations people, engaging directly and engaging we're doing quite a lot of work, as you would expect, with First Nations people, and there's the respectfulness and the ability to drive things at a pace that is not just the pace of a political cycle or some other artificial sort of external factor, but being driven in deep partnership at the pace that both partners agree, and in the way that enables First Nations people to feel proud of the work that we've done together. I think is really important, and I think that we need to be smarter, I think, about how we do that engagement. And Create New South Wales, I lead, is on a journey for that. For us, the more First Nations people we employ, is, we get smarter as an organization. Actually, we have I have to give a shout out. We have an amazing First Nations artist who lives in Kirribilli, Bibi Barba, who works with us. Check out her work, it's absolutely incredible. But Bibi is a world leader. She's in Geneva right now on Indigenous cultural IP, which is a really huge body of work to look at the self-determination of First Nations people's IP. So taking the time to understand, taking the time to engage meaningfully, but doing it in a spirit of partnership and doing it in a spirit of true collaboration is the only way.
Yeah, 100%. I'm interested to understand, Lucy, how Luna Park is representing Cammeraygal people. Luna Park's on Cammeraygal land, and obviously telling the story of Luna Park is telling the story of Cammeraygal. Have you found any crossover in terms of the place of fun and the place of joy with those
it's a really
stories?
important question. It's a really interesting question, actually, because we have 88 years of history as a destination for silliness and fun. And I think, first of all, we need to know that about ourselves, that anything that we do, any collaboration with First Nations artists, has to come from a place of integrity first. And I think we've got a little pathway to move through making work and building and elevating the site as a place for active art making before we make something that could be seen as like a tourist attraction. It has to be led, first of all, as you say, by the artist, right? It's not for us to say, please come and make a work, or please, it's actually utterly vital that we create first a framework and a beautiful hotbed of creativity, which then becomes an opportunity for all artists, including First Nations artists.
Yeah.
And there is, of course, a story to tell there. There's a very, very long and probably very tricky story to tell on our land. But it's not for me, first of all, to say, right, now we're going to do an Indigenous work. It just should not happen like that. First of all, we've got to change everything about us so we're not seen as a place that's flippant and silly.
Yeah.
But we also should be able to we also have to be flippant and silly because that's what we're there for.
Yeah.
How do you balance those things? How do you do it in a way that is embedded in purpose and has meaning and can also be fun and a celebration without being seen to be frivolous?
Yeah.
So it is a really interesting and a very hard question, but it is one that we're working towards.
Of course. And as Annette said, you work alongside. That's the way. So I have one final question for you all, and that is, what is one quick win that you would recommend for North Sydney? And I'm going to start with you this time, Lucy. One quick win for North Sydney.
Do you know what? Your quickest, fastest win is actually a beautiful complete circle to all of tonight's conversation. everybody does like markets, right? No matter where they are the thing that gets everybody out of their house. It becomes your weekend ritual. And culture, the very essence of culture is putting people together, right? The human beings are in a place together and they're interacting. That is where culture is born. That is actually the definition of where culture lives. So what you have if you create a market, and if anybody was to drive an initiative that is, here, we're going to put a market here. Do you know what that does? That provides an audience. That means that your students can come and learn to perform for that audience. Your artists can be making for that audience. Your musicians can be practicing for that audience. You actually create this wonderful environment from which creativity can grow, from which artists can earn. It becomes a little ecosystem, which is incredibly important, and it is as grassroots as you get.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Annette, what's your recommendation of one quick win for North Sydney?
Well, I'm looking at the space that I'm in right now, right? And I see a piano or an organ or something, and I see a stage and a microphone and lots of seats. And I think like the ability to leverage spaces like this for arts and cultural use, whether it's a performance or whether it's a rehearsal, whether it's a dance, a dance organization working out their next show, being able to leverage the space that already exists, and thinking about ways that council can perhaps open some of its spaces that it doesn't open now to creative use. That would be a very quick win, and it would be pretty cheap.
Yeah. I was thinking the same as we're having that space discussion. Like, look at this great room we're in now, these beautiful murals. Olivia, what's your recommendation? One quick win for North Sydney.
I feel like I'd be piggybacking off yours a little bit. It really is all about the space. But yeah, I think just really thinking about whether maybe people at home have that extra space, whether they're a local business or if they're going into work every day but from home maybe, they know that their offices are empty. Maybe that's an opportunity to speak with the companies they're working for. How can we integrate this with the local artist community, or even whether that's through purchasing artwork from local artists as well, with the focus on First Nations artists. And then I guess my other quick win maybe would be if there was established a residency specifically for an Indigenous artist, a local Indigenous artist. I was able to see through Dr. Emma Hicks, who was one of the artists in residence in Ridge Street Studios as well. She's an Aboriginal artist from another area of Sydney, but she was engaging with local elders all the time. I got to overhear lots of really important conversations that were happening. So I think having those opportunities would be really wonderful. So maybe just establishing a specific space for that too would really help.
Amazing, thank you. Meredith, what is your one quick win for North Sydney?
I would love to see a creative calendar, so a networking event for creatives in North Sydney once a month. So we were talking about it the other night at Creative Conversations. So one at Bradfield where we have creative workshops and things where people can come together, one at Luna Park, one at the Ensemble Theatre, where you're inviting locals to get together. What was so great about the first engagement session we did last week was seeing the buzz in the room. You know, people sat there with their little biscuit and glass of, and sat. And then once the discussion started, you could see the buzz and we'll connect and we're going to connect. And and it was just so exciting when you bring creative people together, how quickly the buzz happens. And so if there was a calendar where there was something you could just drop into, or we'll go to the Ensemble one, or we'll go to the Luna Park one, or something down at the Coal Loader, it's using the spaces and using the places, but it's bringing the people together for a purpose.
And all ages. And
building a
fantastic.
true creative community.
I'll happily come and facilitate for you. Sounds wonderful. Look, that leads us to the end of our session. I can't even believe it. We've been here an hour and a half, but thank you all so much. It's been such a great conversation. Thank you to everyone online. Thank you for listening and for your questions. Don't forget the survey's open until the 23rd of June, which is this Sunday. So we really do encourage you to get online and do that survey. I think we've had almost 260 responses to the Culture and Creativity Survey as of today. So that is just amazing. There's a lot of energy for this subject in North Sydney. That's the end for us. So I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Thanks for joining us.